Always hate. All right. What's up, everybody? Everybody, can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Microphone check, sound, audio. Let me know. Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear me? Somebody drop me some ones in the chat, thumbs up, something. Thank you, Adrena. Thank you. All right, everywhere we at, we all locked in. All right, welcome everybody to our Mastermind Fridays. This is our second open house series. If y'all don't know who I am, everybody calls me Jay, aka the Yoda Knows. And in our private community, the Situation Room, this is pretty much where we do these masterminds every week on different topics based on We taking a poll based on where you at as an entrepreneur, where you need help at, kind of cultivate these exercises and these masterminds around that thing. So if you're one of those entrepreneurs and you need guidance, instructions, support, situation where you need to be, you need to tap in. For a low price of $50 a month, one video we do compensates for that. So you get 4 of these a month plus, support. So can't beat that. Today's mastermind is how to start a 501c3 the right way. So let's get into it. Can everybody see my screen? Give me a one in the chat, hands up, 1 or 2, please. I don't want to leave nobody behind. Cool. All right, so in this, which is the topics that we're going to touch on today, the types of nonprofits that are, because they are many and they vary between what your mission is, what you're trying to do, what your intent is, how you want to be classified, and things of that nature. We're going to go over what preparing to get started as a nonprofit, because it's a lot that go into it. It's not just filing corporation papers and saying you're a nonprofit, especially if you want to get the 501c3 designation. We're going to go over incorporating that nonprofit, assembling your board of directors, creating your bylaws and conflict of interest policies, applying for your EIN, and filing for a tax exemption. Here are some of the do's and don'ts, and to demystify some things. You don't have to pay to incorporate yourself. You can do it yourself. But if you're uncomfortable or you're not sure of doing it, then it's okay to pay someone that knows how to do something better than you. But you can incorporate yourself, and it's not very complicated. Second thing is never pay for an EIN number. They are free. You get them directly from the IRS. It takes every bit of 5 to 10 minutes. You don't need a legal degree. You don't have to have a PhD to get an EIN number. What you need to do, though, is buy your domain name. Whatever name that you're choosing for your nonprofit, you want to try to lock that name in as soon as possible. Because, names get picked up every day. And if you choose a name before you set your heart and soul on that name, make sure it's available where you can be able to get the domain, and also make sure that you get the .org version of that domain. Now, when you applying for a nonprofit, the IRS form that is used is called a 1023. And in that 1023 form, it's 2 forms. It's the standard 1023 form, and then it's the 1023 easy form. So the 1023 easy form is what most people go ahead and tackle and try to jump because it's the easiest. But it's stipulations in that 1023 easy form because it has a dollar amount attached to it, which is $50,000. So if you're planning on making less than $50,000 a year and you're just doing a nonprofit off of sweat equity, then you can go that route. But if you're going to be getting more than $50,000 in donations, then you are setting yourself up to get audited within your first 3 years. And that's going to be not a good look for you. You'll lose your designation if you do that. As I mentioned earlier, when you setting up a nonprofit the right way, it is time consuming and it's very detailed because you have to check a lot of boxes, and we're going to go through some of those boxes today. But in checking those boxes, you want to make sure that you have the time to prepare. It's not a quick process. Just waiting on your designation to come back alone can be 6 months to a year. What you also don't want to forget is what's the IRS form is called a 990. And that 990 is the public form of how much donation you accepted, how much money you spent, and things of that nature, so that anybody that's looking to donate to your organization or participate with you in a sponsorship or anything of that nature can go to the IRS website, pull up your 990, and see what type of donations you're getting and how much money you're making as a nonprofit. It's public and everybody can see it. So you got to make sure that you stay compliant. So beginning in the steps of starting a nonprofit, like I said, it can be daunting if you don't have the right tools, if you don't have the right people, if you want to pay a lawyer or anything of that nature. It can cost you anywhere. I've seen it low as $2,500 up as high as $15,000. It really depends on the complexities of your nonprofit, how many members, how many board of directors you have, the details of the mission you're doing. If you have support team attached to it, so it really just depends on what you're trying to do. So it could be minimal or it could be expensive. But if you have the time, you can always do it yourself. And that's kind of where I'm going with this class, is to show you all of the elements that come along with it. So when you're picking your board of directors, that's like really the key to having an organization, is having people that complement and know more than you know and can help guide you when you're setting it up and can give its insight. Now, as a board member, you are a nonprofit, so you have to understand that you're not paying your board of directors. They're strictly on the freebie, on the muscle, sweat equity. That's the down part to when you're doing a nonprofit organization. So you got to take that into consideration. To apply get the tax exempt status with the IRS, filing form 1023. This form requires detailed information about the organization structure, its governance, its finances, and activities. And it's important to carefully review the instructions and seek professional assistance if needed. So once approved, the nonprofit can begin fundraising and providing services to the community. So the key thing that's in that sentence is how important it is to carefully understand the instructions of that 1023 form, because there's certain things that trigger automatic denials. Now, the second thing is choosing what type of nonprofit that you want to be. So nonprofit organizations are classified into different types, each with its own unique purpose and its own structure. One of the types is a charitable organizations, which aims to provide aid and support to individuals or groups in need. Another type is educational purposes, which focus on providing education or training to people. And there are also advocacy organizations that work to promote and defend a particular cause or issue. So to give you some of these examples, you have, let's go to housing. You have like down payment programs and things like that. You have SBA programs that centers that are nonprofit organizations that help you do SBA loans, things like that. You have companies that feed the homeless. That would be community based. Advocacy would be like legal aid, that when you catch cases or traffic ticket like that, where you can go in and get legal help. Those are all different types of nonprofit organizations. If you want to go to a bigger one, we can go to Red Cross, which is humanitarian. So it's all different types. Each one of them are not the same, even though they are nonprofits. How they categorize and how they're fit into the ecosystem of a nonprofit is all different. So let's tackle what is tax exempt, because we use that word. We hear it a lot in entrepreneur space, tax exempt, not paying taxes. But let's break it down how it falls under nonprofit. A tax exempt organization is one that is exempt from paying federal income taxes. Nonprofit organizations are often tax exempt, which means they do not have to pay taxes on the money that they receive. This tax exemption allows nonprofits to use more of their funds to support their mission and their programs. So let me insert something right here too. You can be a nonprofit and also be a profitable nonprofit, but it's a little caveat in there where you could be a nonprofit but for profit. Let me put it like that. You can be a nonprofit but for profit, but you got more rules and regulations in which you have to abide by. Also, as a nonprofit, you have what they call ordinary expenses. So, and ordinary income as well. So you could be a nonprofit and there's certain income that you could receive that would be categorized as income that you would still have to pay taxes on as a nonprofit. So I'm not going to get too much into that because that's a whole conversation in itself. But just know that every dollar you make as a nonprofit don't mean you have to not pay taxes on it, depending on how that money was acquired and how it was brought into your organization. In addition to tax exemption, nonprofits also enjoy other benefits such as access to grants and donations, the ability to apply for government funding, and the ability to offer tax deduction to donors. These benefits allow nonprofits to operate more efficiently and effectively in pursuit of their goals. So just touch on it a little bit. When someone's donate, what I mean by offer tax deductions to donors, if somebody donate, it's a certain dollar amount per year. Well, actually, it's a certain percentage of your gross income that you're allowed to donate and get as a write-off as an individual and as a business. So when you donate to a nonprofit organization, it reduces your tax liability on your taxes. So that's what they mean by the tax deduction for donors. And I think we all know what grants, we know what donations are, and government funding, because that's the same thing. It depends on where you fall. Like income housing, government always has problems where they give credits and set asides to nonprofit organizations that's tied into low income housing, Section 8, homeless, things like that. So that's what government funding is. So now, incorporating a nonprofit in every state, if you done ever filed the LLC or a corporation or anything else with the Secretary of State, the same rules apply for a nonprofit. The difference between is when you file, you're filing as a nonprofit organization, whether it be an LLC or corp, you do the same process, you pay the state fee, you get your documents. Now, at that point, that doesn't make you an official nonprofit. You're not an official nonprofit unless you get the designation from the Internal Revenue Service, the IRS, as a 501c3. So let's define that statute in there, because a lot of people think because they can go to the Secretary of State, file, get a nonprofit, that makes them a nonprofit, and it does not. One of the biggest things about being a nonprofit is compliance. Compliance is what will make you or break you when you function as a nonprofit, because the government and the state are watching everything that you do, because you putting yourself in their jurisdiction by requesting that 501c3. So it comes with stipulations of things you can and can't do, such as, talking about political things like that, or campaigning for political parties and things like that. They will revoke your 501c3. Applying for EIN. If you done an LLC, if you got an LLC and if you done did this, then you understand what an EIN number is. If you haven't, an EIN number, short and sweet, is basically the social security number for your entity. It's real simple, nothing complex in that. Now, how you apply for this EIN for your nonprofit is different than how you would apply for your LLC. Now, when I mentioned about your board of directors, your board of directors going to consist of a president, a treasurer, a secretary, and a vice president. That's the core of it. Some of those positions, you can hold 2 positions, but it's better if you have different individuals to hold those other positions. So for instance, you could be the VP and the treasurer, or the VP and the secretary, or you can just be the VP and then hand it off to somebody else. but you don't want to be all parties by yourself. Like when you do an LLC, you everybody, unless you got business partners or somebody else on that LLC with you. But other than that, it's just you by yourself. You can get a title, name, whatever you want to be. Manager, you can be CEO, you can be CEO, whatever. Pink Frog if you wanted to. But in a nonprofit, your board of directors, how you correlate them, it matters. And the reason it matters is it's multiple reasons. But you want the roles and responsibilities to be given to someone else that either have skill sets you don't have or can assist you in growing your nonprofit. Because if this is something new that you're used to, new that you're starting and you haven't never ran a nonprofit, you want to try to bring in people that have or have some type of experience that you don't have and make them up and solicit to them to be a part of your board member. Sorry about that. And you notice in the first sentence, it says non-related individuals are on the board that no family members are involved. So take that into consideration, because I know we be quick to want to put our mama on something or sisters and brothers on something too. So make sure, like I said, it's a little bit more stringent when you do a nonprofit. And each one of those positions has specific roles and responsibilities too. Now, again, if you had an LLC before, you have created articles of organizations before. Now, in some states, when you do your articles, it's just one sheet that the Secretary of State have you fill out when you go to register it, and that's considered your articles of organization. But then there's another set of documents that you're supposed to have as an LLC or corporation, and that's your articles of incorporation. Those names can bounce back and forth depending on what state you're in. But either way, that document is supposed to outline the operation of your business. Who owns what, who does what, the rules and regulations of how the business is ran, who contributed what dollar amount, what the shares is, different clauses if one of you pass away or one of you leave the business, all these legal substances that's supposed to be in this document, everyone's supposed to have as a LLC and as a corp. Usually when it's a corporation is when the bylaws kick in. On an LLC is just usually your articles. So every company, if you go to the SEC website and you pull up any company has its bylaws. Huh? From who? Where they looking from? On the Zoom? Mm-hmm. It says joint situation room. And a few people saying they not members. Chris can't see it. It's JJ just called me. Hold on, y'all, 1 second. It just shows that. Oh, now I can. Yeah, now I can. Okay. What do you see now? Okay, I just want to make sure. All right, sorry about that. Some of my Zoom people couldn't see. Hopefully everybody else can see now, right? All right, cool. All right, back to it. bylaws. So on the corporation side, the bylaws usually is, I mean, I've said you can go to any SEC, you go to the SEC and you can pull up any company. And if you pull up that company, every corporation have bylaws. And the bylaws are the rules and regulations upon which that company operates and runs. So now, in doing that, let me see if I can get the YouTube screen back. All right, there we go. All right, so when you're doing a nonprofit, your bylaws is extremely important. There is certain verbiage that has to be in your bylaws that the IRS needs to see when it comes to a nonprofit. As well as you got to have a conflict of interest policy. And the reason being is you're a nonprofit, you're collecting money, you're getting donations. So if you're tied to an organization or another LLC or some other type of business, that your nonprofit is making that business interest conflict with your nonprofit, you are going to get in trouble real fast. So as an example, you're running a nonprofit and you have a real estate company, and that nonprofit is doing low income housing, and you are bringing projects from your LLC real estate company to the nonprofit, and nonprofit is getting grant money, and you have interest in both of those entities, that's a conflict of interest. To break it down and make it simple. So in order to start a 501c3 nonprofit, the IRS requires new tax-exempt organizations to process certain qualifications and to maintain these qualifications. One of these federal qualifications is to have a strong, structured, and meticulous worded nonprofit bylaws. You notice that word meticulously. These bylaws act as a rule book to govern day by day activities of the nonprofits and are used to solve conflicts and problems between board members and employees. It is important to take time to create perfect bylaws for nonprofits and to be cautious of free documents found online. Another important document required by the IRS for those stating a 501c3 nonprofit is a conflict of interest policy. This policy is necessary to combat corruption in new 501c3 nonprofits and public charities, and is considered to be the most important organizational document that a nonprofit can possess. It is important to understand what a conflict of interest is and how to avoid it. Now, that's very strong. That's probably this section, these two things, bylaws and conflict of interest policies, is probably the most two important things in structuring your nonprofit than anything else. Because this is what separates and let the IRS know that, one, you're not commingling, you don't have no conflict of interest. You'll outline in detail how your operation is going to be ran, who is going to be ran by, what those responsibilities of those individuals is, what's your contingencies if one of those individuals fall off, and XYZ. Is very detailed. It's not a one-page thing. It's not a two-page thing. It's very detailed. All right, let me stop this. All right, everybody should be able to see me all the way across the board. All right, so now that outline of the nonprofit is to this point here. It's a DIY thing. You can do it as a DIY thing and save yourself a whole lot of money. And in saving yourself a whole lot of money, all you need is tools, understanding, I'll give you some core elements of it, like your mission statement, things like that. Your purpose, your biography to show your experience of what it is that you do. All these things are components of it. There are even things inside a nonprofit called NNTE code that is coded. Those codes is similar to if you got an LLC and you have NICA codes. These codes are related to nonprofits, because if you're going to pursue government grants or grants from state, local, city officials, they award those grants based off those codes. So you have to classify yourself in whatever category fits your mission driven purpose. And in your mission driven purpose, that's how you will get associated with those grants, by when you pick that code. So just like in the LLCs and corporations, when people tell you, y'all know what your NICA code is, your NAICS code, because that's how the bank look at you. So the bank know what category you fall in from tax purposes and everything else. Those codes mean something. So preparing for those things up front and knowing how you're going to categorize yourself will prevent you over time from having issues. Now, one of the questions I already got is, do we set up nonprofits? Yes, we can. But my mission, or the purpose of this, is so that you could do your own. So that equipped you with the tools, the information to do it on your own. So everything that we would do, if we did it for you, we have a detailed outline, templates, and everything to be able to do it yourself. And when I say everything, I mean everything. Every single template for every single page that's needed, from instructions, from breakdown of the 1023 form, and to the point where you in box 1, it tells you what should go in box 1, how it should be in box 1. Instead of writing in this box, add an attachment to it and outline the description that you want, or whatever goes in that box, on a separate sheet of paper. It's an ebook kind of going over what was in these slides, but in a little bit more detail. It's links to the forms to the IRS. It's even down to the point where it's a budget calculator in there that you can work your budget on, because you got to put your financials in there. Even though you ain't made $1, you have to put your projected financials inside of your packet. And once your packet is complete, this is what you send to the IRS to get your determination letter. And the cost of it to send to the IRS is $600 by itself for a nonprofit. So whatever your state fee, this is kind of what it would cost you. Your state fees, whatever your state is when you register with the Secretary of State, that fee is vary state to state, but it's usually no more than $200. Some states may be higher, but for the most part, it's about $200. Your EIN number is free. Now, there's other things that you need to get, but you can get that at your discretion. That's, like your phone number, your domain name, address where you're going to do it at. Those type of things like that is what I would consider miscellaneous fees. Are they important? Absolutely. But those three things combined is still maybe $100. So you somewhere around $500 just in that part. You throw in the $600 to file with the IRS, you at $1,100. Now, could it be a little bit more other miscellaneous things in there? Yeah, but those not major expenses. So technically, for less than $2,000, you should be able to set up your own nonprofit and file your paperwork, know with confidence that is done, and you'll get approved. Now, the reason I say we could do it, but it's going to cost you way more than that, is just because of how intensive it is. So I'd rather give you the tools and have you do it yourself. And then after you finish yourself, I just charge you to review it, check for any mistakes, things like that, or give you feedback, which would cost you less. So to do that, just say it's $1,000. You take that cost of what I just gave you, and you should be in maybe $2,000, $2,500 max to do your own nonprofit organization. Now, you can always go pay an attorney, but you still kind of end up doing the same thing anyway, because regardless of who you pay, can't nobody relay your mission better than you can. Because all an attorney gonna do is sit and ask you a bunch of questions. What's your mission statement? What's this? What's that? What's your bio? Who's this person's bio? All these, you're gonna sit there and ask you all these questions. So technically, you're gonna start off having to submit all of this stuff anyway, because it got to come out of your head to paper or to that person who's doing it. It's just what it is. There's no way, it's no template or cookie cutter thing to say this nonprofit, I can go grab this template, or I already have a template made up that I could use to fit what I'm trying to do. Because every nonprofit is different. Every nonprofit runs different. Every nonprofit is in a different state. Nonprofits do different things. All of that. Some are big, some are small. So either way it go, you the one that's got to put in that energy and effort into outlining what it is that you're trying to do. Now, what the template does is put you in the headspace so you know, okay, I'm on my conflict of interest policies. And in this template, it outlines the key points that I need to touch on in the conflict of interest. And you can look and evaluate yourself in your whatever situation you're in, however other entities as you have, and you can see what that conflict of interest is, if it is one. Same thing if you was doing your bylaws. All of the guts of what need to be in those bylaws is already there. You just got to tender it to specifically to your thing. So that alone is reducing not only your costs, but also your time. So at the end, you know what I'm saying, if anybody wants to get those templates and those guides and the instructions on how to fill out those 1023 forms and all that stuff, let me know and I will get you over the link where you can go pick those up. It's $249. Can't beat it. It's worth way more than that, but it's $249. And if you're in the situation room, I got a discount code for you. Y'all can just reach out to me in the situation room and I'll shoot it to y'all with the discount on top. So I'm open up the floor, wherever channel you on. You got a question, raise your hand. Any of that, let me know. I'm here. Let me see. I see one question. It's from YouTube. You mean an individual cannot be speaking on political matters, or just the non-entity cannot do so? No, if you're a part of that nonprofit, you cannot be speaking on certain political elements. You can't be supporting political campaigns, like as far as donations or none of that type of stuff when you get a 501c3. Let me see. Somebody said this question. You got the floor, Miss Moody. I can't hear you though.
My sound is up.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Hi. How are you?
Hello.
So you mentioned that it's not a good idea to have family members on the board. But what if you're like co-founders of a 501c3 with your family? How?
You can do it. You can do it two ways. You can do it. If you're gonna make yourself an employee, that's different than the board. So it's two separate things. You have your staff, employees, stuff like that, and then you have your board. So your board is like your advisory team, and then you have the operation side. So you can keep those two things separate. So you can have a founder. You two can be the founder. You don't have to be on your board. Yep. All right, so all my people that's visiting, this is a judgment-free zone over here. We don't do shy. A lot of people be on these Zooms and these webinars and live and just sit in the back in the peanut gallery and don't really communicate, don't say nothing, don't have questions. Now, if you don't have a question, that's one thing. But if you do, it's a judgment-free zone.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
The codes that you mentioned before that apply to nonprofit and entity codes, what exactly is, can you go over that again? Because I just
I'll do you one better.
really fast and I just wanted to get that clear.
So they're called NTEE codes. If you Google them, it should come right up. It's National Taxonomy of Exempt Entities.
Okay. And so you mentioned they're similar to our next codes for regular LLCs.
That's correct.
And so it's classification only?
Exactly. That's how they're able to determine what industry, how much money go to one industry as opposed to another, those type of things like that. Same way like Nike code, like when they do data analysis and they can determine that, this industry is high risk as opposed to this industry being high risk. That's the same thing.
Okay, so can a nonprofit be high risk and what areas does that cover?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily that it would say it would be high risk. It's just more of when they coming up with grants and whoever it is, whether it's private foundation, charitable foundations, or they doing endowments or whatever the case may be, they look at that data to see who's being neglected, who's not, who's getting more money than the other entities get more money. Because like I said, nonprofits cover multiple things. So you take a company like Red Cross in a humanitarian space, when government come out with different grants for certain things, they're more likely to win it over somebody else because of the space they're in and how they're categorized.
Be under multiple categories.
You can't be in multiple categories if they're closely related. So you can be in housing and you could be a CDFI who lends money as down payment programs to help the poor. And you can also be a developer and building low income housing. So those are two different spaces, but they complement one another.
So it's like if I'm doing something that applies to medical, and then I also have like counseling services or something.
Yep. For instance, you could have substance abuse and then a rehab facilities for the substance abuse or transitional housing.
As long as it's comparable and it's in that same space, you're saying, instead of like you mentioned before, real estate, as a broker investor doing something in a nonprofit, for profit to nonprofit.
Correct. Now you can't be saying you doing medical and real estate or substance abuse and humanitarian. Right. Anybody else? Q&A. Q&A. Make sure I ain't forgetting nobody. Oh man, I didn't even know the chat was off. My bad, y'all. I didn't even see that dream. I'm sorry.
It's okay, you rectified it now. We can see you, we can hear you, and all of that. So we're good.
The chat open now too, so somebody want to shoot them questions. All right, JJ.
Blessed, can you hear me?
JJ.
Okay, let's go. Hey, JJ, I appreciate you, bro. I don't want to keep, Miss Andrina had a very good question, but I just kind of want to, I guess, double down on her last question. So let's say I'm in the medical massage space and decide to get a facility that delivers that service.
Mm-hmm.
That is also considered real estate, but of course you have that service inside, so we can make that happen within the nonprofit, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. That's it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Oh, I see a good question. Can I post it up? No. Oh, it's in the webinar chat. So the question is, how is Starbucks a nonprofit? So you heard me mention a charitable foundation. So when you're talking from a legal structure standpoint, and this is why I say it's good to always go to the SEC website when you want to get information on the company and see how they structured. And the reason being is Starbucks has an entity called Starbucks. Let me make sure I get this. It's called a Starbucks Foundation. So the Starbucks Foundation is the nonprofit. So if you go to the SEC.gov website and you look up Starbucks, or you Google Starbucks subsidiaries and you look how it's structured, you will see why. It's not that Starbucks whole company is a nonprofit. It has a nonprofit foundation included in its corporate structure. And once you see that, then you go look at how foundations work and who benefit from having a foundation and what's a foundation, a charitable foundation purpose is and what it can do if you have one. And right there, you figure out what they're doing. I'm not used to not getting no questions. This is foreign to me. Yeah, I knew I was gonna get that one. I was expecting that one. So a 508 is a religious organization. So is a 509. So that's where you fall in the church, ministries, in that category. So a 503, you got to go get permission to get that designation to be a 501c3. As a church, you can also be a 501c3, but you don't have to get the designation because by default, a church is tax exempt. By default. 508 is just a variation of a church, but under 508. But it's the same thing. They are tax exempt by default. So in your bylaws and your article, like I said, that's the rules. That's where you define where you fall when it comes to taxes and how you are categorized to the IRS. So if you're going to do a 508, your documents has to dictate that that's your purpose and how you function. So at the end of the day, it's all tax code. It's all about how you classify yourself within the IRS tax code that determines your eligibility to be tax exempt and to what degree that eligibility is. Go ahead, JJ. You already up on the panel.
Okay. So, anytime anybody has a purpose within inside of the business or whatever it is that they follow, as long as they abide by the tax code, it will correlate with a ministry, period, correct?
Well, a church and a ministry is two different definitions. So when you go into the IRS code and you look it up, you're going to have church, you're going to have ministry, and you have a couple other ones behind that. So you'll have like, it's an educational lane. And then that fourth one is, hold on, I'll tell you what it is.
Okay, it's coming together because I got my notes. Okay, all right, okay, yeah. Okay, all right. Yeah, why you doing that? I'm writing this down.
Oh man, Google just crashed on me like that. So this is how they define church in Internal Revenue. Church and religious organization. So they say that the term church is found but not specifically defined in the Internal Revenue Code, with the exception of the special rules for church audits. The use of the term church also includes conventions and association of churches, as well as integrated auxiliaries of the church. That's the other word I was looking for, integrated auxiliaries.
Integrated auxiliary, so it said nothing about religion.
Nothing. Now, it's a list of what they consider to be characteristics are generally attributed to churches, but it's not saying that this is defining a church. It's just said these are characteristics that relates to the word church. So see how they distinguish in that separation?
Yeah.
So it's distinct legal existence, recognized creed and form of worship, definitive and distinct ecclesiastical government, formal code or doctrine and discipline, distinct religious history, membership not associated with any other church or denomination, organization of ordained ministers selected after completing prescribed course of study, literature of its own, established places of worship, regular congregations, regular religious services, Sunday school for religious instruction of the young, school for the preparation of its members.
Okay, got it.
So now if you went and say, okay, I'm going to go divine religious, you could be a religious athlete, a workout addict. You could be a religious foodie. You could be religious at dieting, and you could congregate at the gym 3 days a week.
Okay. Got you.
Because if you did that, wasn't that be a formal code of doctrine and discipline?
Yes.
If you created your own workout plan and diet of this is all we eat, wouldn't that be considered literature of its own?
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
It's no difference than, you know, the Ted Bundys of the world and all the rest of them. Big win.
Okay. I'm just making sure I'm not crazy because I hear everybody talking, and I I couldn't respond to anything. I couldn't make a comment or nothing. Okay. I'm good. I just need to make sure I'm on the right platform. I mean, I see your face, but yeah.
Yeah, you good.
Chaos.
I didn't know the chat was off.
Well, yeah. Well, when I was on my laptop, I'm on my laptop and the phone, and so I was like, I can't ask any question, but I didn't even see the raise hand feature. Now I can see it on the laptop and I can see it. So that's why I've been bouncing out, bouncing back in. So I'm like, I don't. Maybe I did something wrong. All right, I'm good.
All right, bet. Let me see how many people should be on the board and how many people should be usually on the staff for a new nonprofit to fall under the ministry. Well, the staff nor the board doesn't make the ministry. You defining it as a ministry makes it the ministry. Now, as far as the board members, there are seats that you should have butts in. Vice president, secretary, treasurer, and vice president, secretary, treasurer, and what's the other one? I hate when I can't remember. What was it? What was that, Mr. Moody?
Wasn't just president?
Oh, yeah, president. Yeah.
Secretary, vice president?
Yep, that was it. Make sure I ain't missing nobody up in here. Man, y'all starting to make my Fridays easy with these Q&A. I know where I'm gonna get y'all though. I'm gonna get y'all on that AI 2.0. Yes, T. You should. What state you in? Oh, you in a good state. It's cheap in Washington. And it's easy to register to get the your charitable number in Washington. They are very friendly state when it comes to, especially if you're trying to do a 508. Man, people around here really shy. It's amazing. Let's see. Some of y'all I know Roberta. I don't know Roberta. One of the that's Win. When you set up a religious organization, especially if you do like a 508, you can operate internationally. Welcome to religion. So technically, you don't even have to foreign file to operate in another state. Now, as a 501(c), same thing. You can move it anywhere. Then it's another level above that, and it's called an NGO. In an NGO, you definitely can operate internationally. Red Cross is an NGO. Like it's almost like taking the gloves off. You know that term, taking the gloves off? When you start functioning from a religious organization, nonprofit, it kind of breaks the barriers of what you're used to as functioning as an LLC, corporation, or any other entity.
So Jay, if you do the, I'm trying to get this because I've heard this before. If you do the 508 and the 501, does that create the 509? I might be messing this up. You might get what I'm saying. To create the ultimate level of I've heard this before. I've heard the 501, 503, and the 508. But then I'm missing something where, and you just mentioned something that just jogged my memory in my brain to say, okay, like if you had those two and it creates that 509 and it takes you to another level of putting you out of everything, taxes and all kinds of craziness.
Yeah. So you got different sections. You got, if you go look under the IRS code at 501, you got 501, you got 503s, you got 509s. It just all depends on what it is you're trying to do. So it's not just about saying I'm this. You got to be moving in that you say you are. You just can't do it just for the sole purpose I don't want to pay taxes. That's where my people get in trouble at. So, give you an example. A private foundation. She asked about Starbucks, and I said that Starbucks has a Starbucks Foundation. That's a private foundation. As a private foundation, it's usually have a single source of income, whether that be a family, generational, or an entity such as a corporation. So it doesn't get its money from outside donors. Its money is internal. And then they have something where they focus on that they donate that money to in the form of grants to individuals. So as an example, Howard University or not Howard, with the Ivy League school,
Harvard, Princeton.
Harvard.
Yep.
Like Harvard has one of the biggest endowments in the billions, but it's a nonprofit.
The school itself is labeled or registered as a nonprofit
Correct. Under education.
under education. So you're saying that goes back to you saying whatever you have to be doing whatever it is that you're setting yourself up as to not get caught or in trouble when.
Well, it's not about getting caught. First, like when I was talking to JJ and I outlined what they define as characteristics of a church. So if you're gonna say, okay, I'm a church, well, you gotta act like a church. You gotta do things that church people do. And you know they didn't define church in itself, the word. They just gave characteristics of what is church-like things.
Right, and yes, I heard you. Okay, say that. So, okay, characteristics. I think I need to. Got you.
So even if you say I'm doing a ministry, there's no set rule. That ministry don't have to function under a religious aspect. Like you don't have to be a Muslim. You don't have to praise God. You don't have to pray. You don't have to, if you a Buddhist, you don't have to do any of that to be a ministry. A ministry, you could be you ministering to youth, teaching them, mentoring them how to be better men. That's ministry. And you never have to use the word God, Allah, or nothing else.
Okay, I guess a good example of that would be what church Scientology.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
And it's a gang of organizations out here like that. It's organizations out here that worship Pokemon. You got the NFL. It's a nonprofit. It's an unincorporated association. You have football leagues. You have social clubs. You got business leagues. All those are considered nonprofits. Nonprofits. You have nonprofits that fall under science, public safety, literary. So like you have art galleries and art collectors that are nonprofits. Let me see who is Katrina. I got certified with the state of Maryland. I know the next step is filing federal, right? What documents will I need? You're going to need everything I outlined at the beginning of this presentation. Bylaws, conflict of interest policies, articles, mission statement. You need the breakdown from your 1023 application on the instructions, different sections in there on your mission goals, who's running, you're gonna need your budget, your financials. You're gonna need your compensation schedule for what you paying employees and staff members and stuff like that. Outline of your board of directors. I want to say it's about 10 different documents, and most of those documents is you have to create them yourself, unless you was paying somebody. So that's why I told if anybody wanted those templates and that outline of what steps to take, it's $249. Roberta. Oh, what's up, Tristan? I am tax exempt too. If I get my money from the 508, do I separate the person from the entity? Sorry, I'm not making myself clear. English is not my first language. Um, now it's clear, but when you say separate the person from the entity, because under the 508, what position, what role do you play? That's the question. Because when you use the word, if I get my money from the 508, what position or role are you playing in that 508 to be able to get yourself money? Because at the end of the day, you still a religious organization, you still tax exempt, which means all money come in is supposed to be donations. Now, as those money come in and you collect those donations, depending on the position that you play, are you a member? Are you a employee? Or are you a board member? Because depending on which role you play, you can't pay yourself. Mr. Day, my man. How can one use it? I feel like you're trying to trick me, bro, because you already sharp. I already know you know what time it is. How can one use their ministry to obtain a sales and use tax certificate? You use the ministry and apply with the state. Not actually, it depends on where you at. Like here in California, you will apply with the CFPTB to get that sales and use tax, which is basically a reseller's permit. When setting up it as a ministry, set it up as a ministry. Make it fall underneath a church. There's a lot of benefits that come with that. But you'd be better off going after grants than going after debt. I'm not saying you can't go get funding, but I would go after grants before I went after debt. Like if you guys really set whatever it is that you're really trying to do. I know a lot of people do things for the purpose of the keyword tax exempt. I understand that. But if you really do something, real mission driven purpose, and you get out and you network within that mission driven purpose, you'll be able to raise donations to support that mission driven purpose. And in that bundle that I told you that was $249, I put in there, I think it's about 9 different ways that you can, from where you can go get grants from, how to get the grants, all of that in there, even from fundraising. It is so many grants out here. Go ahead, JJ.
All right, I think I'm saying this to hear myself and also just to get it out and share. So, life investors, right? As a ministry goes and speaks to different schools, a life investor receives grants from whatever foundation that funds the transportation for life investors to get to the schools. The schools pay life investors for their service to minister to the students, and that money funds the vehicle for life investors to operate their ministry and also other facilities to operate within the purpose of the mission statement. That's solid, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I just had to
So like,
go ahead.
so for instance, somebody could donate you a vehicle and get it as a tax write off. Somebody could donate you 50,000 and you take 30,000 of it and go buy a van because you needed to go pick the youth up to take them to that, and the van is registered in the ministry's name. All of that is all on the up and up. There's no gray line in that, because that's how most nonprofits function. If it was a ministry and nonprofit and you built up the business credit on it, you could go get a fleet of vehicles and they probably gonna give you a discount because you're a nonprofit. But when you function and you try to do more from the donation side than you do from the debt side, like you would with a business.
And the school will be donating to the nonprofit for their service.
Correct. Because it's a tax write-off for them.
Right. And then
And you could take that same money donated and pick a kid and create a scholarship for that kid.
yes, 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 okay. Yes, okay. And just to take it one step further, because I've already outlined my trust, and of course I got other components. That ministry, life investment ministry, could be protected inside of the trust along with the assets that life investor holds, correct?
Correct. So your trust can own the ministry as well as own the life investors, two separate ones, right? Said that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So the trust could own both of those.
Okay. All right. Yes. Yes. Okay.
Katrina, I would need all of those forms when I just am starting budget and I don't have it all. Yes. If you want to get that 501c3 designation, yes. Because your budget is it's not about what you're making now. It's a projection. Because even running as a nonprofit, you have expected expenses. You're gonna need a phone, you're gonna need internet, you're gonna need whatever it is, professional services. You gotta pay to incorporate, you got filing fees, all those is a part of the budget, what would be considered startup costs. And then you project it out over time, year 2, year 3, because you're planning on doing fundraisers or you're planning on applying for grants. So it's a projection. So you have to have it because that's what the IRS want to see. That's why I was saying, I was harping on, it's different with a nonprofit when you're trying to get a 501c than when you're just running an LLC or a corp. Minutes a day. Of course it can. me see. Let me show you something. Let me show you something. If you're registered, you register for the webinar. So I'm gonna send an email blast out after this with the link to the forms. I don't know if I posted in the chat. Maybe y'all can. Let me see. See if y'all can copy and paste it. I just dropped it in the chat for you. I'm gonna still send it out at the end in an email blast too, but I posted it in the chat. It's just for the 501. 508 is a different beast. I do have the 508 though. They're just not in that bundle. So, like I said at the beginning, for those that wasn't here, this was a 2-week open house series last week and this week. So after this one, we back to regular schedule program. Said the 2.9 bundle is likely unnecessary right now if all I'm figuring out is a basic LFC. Correct. I'm not trying to say nothing that you don't need. That's not my stilo. If you have no aspirations at the moment to be doing, if your LLC, if you set up the LLC as a nonprofit and you want to get the 501c3 designation, then yes, you would need to use the paperwork to complete that. But if you're just functioning from a LLC perspective, doing regular business, and that's the lane that you're in, then the nonprofit doesn't serve you no purpose at the moment. So what I was saying was, you just gave me a good question. Is there a type of business you definitely would not set up as a nonprofit? I wouldn't set up any business as a nonprofit if I need to make profit. That makes sense. So if I'm setting up a business and the business is, I needed to make profit, I wouldn't do it as a nonprofit just because you think that's going to give you some way of avoiding taxes.
AJ, this might be an elementary question, but you just said setting up the LLC as a nonprofit. Okay. Setting up an LLC as a nonprofit. In my head, I'm thinking either you set up an LLC and or you set up a nonprofit?
Correct. I probably, because I was trying to read into her question, because she put more so for a nonprofit I meant, so I disregarded the LLC part. But to compound on your what you was asking me, you can have a nonprofit LLC though.
Oh, okay. Now, okay. Now down. Okay. Can we just break that down real quick for me? 'Cause I didn't know that. So if you already have an LLC, it can be an LLC can be a nonprofit.
Yeah, you can designate as a nonprofit.
All you have to do is just go through the same steps, but
I don't know if that's in every state, but in California, you can.
okay, okay, okay.
But here's so let me give you an example of if you go that route, because that's like top of the food chain question and answer, right? Might go over some people's head. Let's say your life investor, right? I take my juniorpreneurs and we go get Mark's, whatever his is. All three of us together can create an association, right? And create a nonprofit LLC with all three associations on that LLC as a nonprofit LLC.
Now we're talking. Okay. Now it's yes. Now we're talking. So when you say association, we're talking about unincorporated association, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
Or group. Or it can be a group. So group or association.
so the LLC or an LLC that is created as a conglomerate with two others, just like you painted the picture, creates an unincorporated association. That picture is the formula of an LLC being a nonprofit.
Correct.
Okay.
Because as a regular LLC, you for profit. So the only difference is you going to get the tax exempt status as a nonprofit.
Gotcha. Okay. We're clear. Appreciate you.
All right. So what I said at the beginning, in case everybody wasn't here, this was a 2-week series of we called it open house of the Situation Room, and we do these every Friday inside the Situation Room. It's on various topics. 90% of the time, the topics are based on the community and where they're at. So I don't get in, we don't, whether it's me, sometimes JJ teach on stuff, Chris, I don't see him in here, but Chris teach on certain things, Mark teach on certain things. But whatever we teaching on or whatever we discussing or whatever we talking about, sometimes it's just check-ins to see where you guys at as entrepreneurs, where you're struggling at, where you need help at. And we cater those masterminds and those conversations based on the temperature of the community. We just don't get up there and just talk about random stuff. We try to stay in to help you elevate and grow. So if you at just starting off, it's totally fine. We will talk to you where you just starting off at and get you to wherever you need to be, where you caught up with everybody else or wherever somebody else is at. We don't have no rules as far as where you got to be in your entrepreneur journey. Our whole mission and driven in the community is to lift everybody and help everybody. We got a crap ton of resources in there. We used to be on Telegram, so we just moved from Telegram into a full community so that we can put more resources and make it easily accessible than trying to scroll through Telegram and look for links and lose. If you come in, you kind of lost in the sauce. So we moved everybody into a community, and that's the purpose of that. The cost of the community is only $50 a month. Probably got now over 10, 12 masterminds in there. And that alone is so much information in those masterminds that it'll serve anyone justice. At least I think so. I might be tooting my horn a little bit, but, there's people in the gallery can verify it. You got to take my word for it. But, yep, that's what we do. Next month, the next big webinar is what we doing. It's called 100K in a day. So that's going to be a big boy right there. We're giving everybody that attend, it's for business credit, and everybody getting business credit real time, on the spot, whoever attend. Guaranteed. Ain't doing no credit checks, ain't doing nothing. So if your business credit is lacking, you struggling with your business credit and you've been out here chasing them vendors, 100K in a day. Pre-registration is up. Y'all go to my link, Yoda Knows. Link is in my bio. Let me see. What else am I missing? If for any reason, I know some of you guys in on YouTube, some was on Instagram, different places. If you didn't register and just came in on the live on itself, you can DM me, shoot me, email, message, whatever it is. If you want to get that bundle, and I'll shoot you the link for it. I know I put it in the chat, but for those that maybe don't have access to the chat, just hit me up. I'll shoot it out to you. I think that's about it, man. I don't think I'm missing nothing. If anybody in my situation room family here felt I'm missing something, y'all let me know. Let me see. Oh, I got another question popped up in here. All right, Jay, $1 million question. How can one use their ministry to participate in equity lending and angel funding activities via its church and its auxiliaries? That's a tough one from an equity lending standpoint, because as a ministry or church, usually equity lending lends into a project or a business model or something of that nature. So unless that ministry is involved in something like real estate development for low-income housing or something like that, then you can be able to slide up into equity lending. Angel funding, kind of the same way, because they fund based on projects or whatever it is as a donation. So technically, you might better get away with the angel funding, depending on what that ministry is doing. But I still say the best route to take with that is grants and donations. All right, I appreciate everybody that slid through. Hopefully I'll see some of them new faces in the situation room. Everybody that's in the situation room, I'll see y'all when I see y'all. What was that?
Situation.
Yeah, situation room. Situation room.